Hello, everyone. I am food and dining reporter Rebecca King, and today I am here to talk about the New York craft beer scene. We have some special guests who are going to be chatting with us. And the COVID-19 pandemic has touched nearly every industry, and breweries are no exception. So I have with me today Scott Vaccaro, who is the founder of Captain Lawrence Brewing in Elmsford, and Pat Leone, the executive director of New York State Brewers Association. We will bring them on. There we go. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great. So we have a lot to cover. It's a very interesting topic and something that not a lot of people know the ins and outs of. I think people drink a lot of beer and they just don't know where it's coming from or what's going on behind it. So Paul, first of all, can you give us an overview of how COVID-19 has affected breweries in New York and what have been some of the main issues that they're facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, we all, like every brewery in every state, sort of got hit hard with this very suddenly. And, I think back to March when breweries were slowly their occupancy was getting scaled back. And we're very fortunate here in New York State to have a governor and legislature and a state liquor authority that really cares about this industry. And I remember specifically right before the shutdown was on March 16th, the stay-at-home order. And then on 2 days, on that Saturday, I got a call from the state liquor authority saying, this is coming. And we're reaching out to you guys to see what you'll need during this, which is, amazing to me, like that they would reach out and try to be proactive. And so we immediately said we need to be essential, and breweries do. And, one thing that you couldn't do before all of this was ship. They're going to need curbside, they're going to be able to go, like whatever they can do. And they took all of our information, and I think it was almost by the end of the week, all of those permissions were granted. And the message was conveyed to breweries, hey, you can do this to stay alive. And it really did save the industry, I think. And so, Scott can speak more how he was able to utilize those privileges, but those privileges really have kept a lot of breweries alive enough to be where we are today to slowly reopen.
Definitely. Yeah. And Scott, if you can talk a little bit about first of all, what issues you faced at Captain Lawrence and how these regulations helped you.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were immediately, our retail and hospitality operation was shut down immediately. And that's obviously a big part of what we do, even being as, old and well distributed in the area as we are. We still rely on, customers coming to see us and, having a good time in our beer hall and our beer garden. And, the shutdown obviously, shut that down completely. And, being granted the ability to do, home deliveries, curbside pickup, was a saving grace. I mean, without that, I wouldn't even, like to think about where we'd be right now. And like, to echo what Paul said, I mean, having a governor and a legislature and the state liquor authority really, be behind us. And, they've been so instrumental in, expanding our rights and allowing us to grow as an industry within the state of New York. I mean, this was just one more instance with them, having our backs and really just, helping us through what's a pretty horrendous time.
Yeah, that's great. And it's varied state by state how people have responded to the needs of every industry, not just breweries, dining and beyond. So with that said, what are your thoughts on how the government responded? Obviously, it sounds positive. Is there anything else that you could think that if this happens again, if a second wave hits, which a lot of people are predicting, what can the government do to help you guys?
I think the one thing that those temporary privileges that we just talked about, the shipping and the curbside and the home delivery and all of that are just that. They're temporary. Right now, they're set to expire June 27th. So we as an association, are really pushing the governor's office hard to say, look, this needs to go on. These privileges need to happen until this is over, until the breweries are allowed 100% capacity, because most regions tomorrow, in 5 regions of the state, they're going to be able to finally reopen for on-premise consumption. And that's phase 3. And not every brewery is at that, not every region is at that stage. So, they're allowed 50% capacity. And so they're still going to need the shipping and the curbside and the and the home deliveries, because not everybody's going to be ready to go out, but their margins were small to begin with. So to say that 50% capacity is going to be enough for those privileges to go away is ridiculous. And it's our job as an association to kind of convince state government that these need to be, breweries need this, because they're not going to be able to survive well at 50% capacity.
Right.
Yeah,
Scott, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'll just echo that. I mean, these temporary privileges have been, a godsend. I mean, they've been a lifeline, and I don't even want to think about them going away on the 27th, because I know for a fact we are certainly not going to be as busy and as full as we would have been, on June 27th, 2019. That's for sure. And a big part of my business as well is bars and restaurants, who are, our customer, our main business. And, they're all still going to be at, 50% or less. In some of the regions, New York City, who knows what's going to happen. And that's one of our biggest, markets. And so, I've tried not to think too far into the future, because it kind of freaks me out. But the Paul and the team they've had our backs, and so it's been I've enjoyed getting the emails every morning, and they've been good.
I think it's one step at a time. Everybody's just taking it day by day and trying to get back on their feet. And speaking of that, I've spoken to a lot of different brewery owners, and it seems to have affected people disproportionately. So if you're a newer brewery that is focused mainly on your tap room and having people come in for events, that's going to hit you harder now that tap rooms have closed, as opposed to places that are more used to distribution. Can you talk a little bit about that disparity and how people have been affected differently because of the pandemic?
You want me to jump on that one, or
go for it?
Yeah, I would say that's true to a degree, but even someone like me who, we're 14 years into this, and we have a lot of distribution out there, but of our distributed business, 60+% of it is draft beer. And that's all on-premise business. And that business has disappeared. We haven't sold a keg in 3 months. And, that business is a more profitable business too than selling packaged beer, which has the costs of the glass and the can and all that goes with it. And so, while the distribution, in most of our footprint with the packaged beer has been okay, the draft beer hit has been massive. And on top of that, not having on-premise, retail sales, and relying only on packaged beer to go, again, not selling any draft beer, has been a real blow. It's been, so, everybody obviously has been hit different, like you said. I think a lot of it has to do with, how hard you're being hit is how big is your overhead, and the bigger you get as a brewery, and the more beer you distribute outside of your four walls, the bigger your overhead gets, and the harder it is to maintain any kind of, reasonable revenue flow when you're at no on-prem and nobody's buying draft beer, and your distributors are all freaking out, and it's scary.
Scott hits on a good point. If I can just elaborate on that a little bit, he's 60% of his business is draft beer, and before all of this, there were only a certain number of draft handles available in a certain number of places. And the question now is, okay, so some of these are going to reopen. How many are not anymore because of this? And so those are lost accounts that may never come back. And so that's something that we're really worried about, especially on those bars in New York City, the small places that carried craft beer. It's already uber competitive with big beer. And I just fear it's going to become more competitive because they lost lines too. And they don't just take losing lines lightly, right? So they're going to try to make up their margins as well at any cost. And so that's a real concern.
Yeah, it seems like there's a definite ripple effect between bars are closing down, restaurants are closing down. That's affecting you. Maybe less people are going out to liquor stores, so there's less bottled sales. It's all interconnected in an interesting way. And to switch gears a little bit from that, let's talk about the hopeful side. The cases of COVID-19 are flagging a little bit. Are you hopeful for the future? Paul, if you could start, what are you looking forward to in the future as the pandemic starts to wane a little bit?
I think the key is, everybody's very fearful of a second wave, and I think breweries should plan for it, and just so they're planned for it, and then hope it doesn't happen. I think the key right now to make sure, especially with the way the governor has things set up now in a phased approach, is the reason why he did a phased approach is because you can always stop and go backwards, and we don't want that. So I think if everybody does what they're supposed to do, keep their, the face coverings and the washing of the hands and all of that, and keep the numbers down, we won't see a second wave here in New York State. And hopefully we won't roll back. So we just hope the public does. The breweries are going to take all the precautions they need to. I think the public has to respect that and also take the precautions they need to stop any spread.
Sure. Scott, if you could talk a little bit about what some of those regulations are. So as you're beginning to open up, what are things that you've talked to your staff about keeping people safe in the tap rooms?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a long list of regulations that have been provided to us by the state, that we've, an affirmation of a plan and, what it is we're going to do, the spacing of the tables, the masks, the sanitizing, there's a long list of things. And, one of the things we've talked about, internally at Captain Lawrence with our management and our staff is just, we need to do the right thing in order to instill confidence, in our, to allow our customers to have confidence that we're going to do the right thing and that they're going to want to come here. We don't want to be one of those businesses where people come into and they say, well, they seem pretty lax, or they seem like they're not really taking this serious. And that's the last thing we want people to think. And so, we have a pretty in-depth plan. I mean, we're waiting an extra week to open. We could be open today outside.
Right.
We're waiting an extra week because, you can see in those videos, we have such a large outdoor space that we don't want to be overrun. And we're going to be we're going to be doing reservations only for the first 2 weeks, just so we know who's coming. We know how many parties are coming. We don't want people waiting out in our parking lot in a line, very close to each other. When can we come in? And so, we're trying to be responsible and do it the right way so that our customers can feel confident that they're coming to a safe place. And hopefully it helps our business grow and stay steady and allows us to rehire our staff at the right rate and to ensure they're making enough money to survive. And,
Yes,
so forth.
Definitely. And you, Scott, you've touched on something really great that I want to talk about. We've talked about beer consumers, we've talked about brewery owners, but this goes beyond that to people who just work at breweries. I mean, I think my research shows that there are 468 breweries in New York. So that's a sizable workforce of people, working at those tap rooms and brewers, et cetera. So are you able to begin employing people again? How is that process working out for you? And are you excited for that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we've brought back a significant amount of staff. I mean, we had kind of been down to the bare bones right after the shutdown, and we've hired back our brewers. We've hired back, our packaging team is almost at full strength. We've hired back, our kitchen staff is ready. A lot of our retail staff is back. So, we're gearing up and we're getting ready. And it's been great to see people come back and obviously to, check in on them. We were checking in on them on a regular basis, but everyone's, it's great to have people come back. It's nice to have people in the building again.
Yeah, I can imagine. Paul, is there anything that you want to add from a larger perspective, looking at the broader view of New York craft breweries?
Before this, we were number 2 in the country in breweries, and we were $5.4 billion impact on the state. And we had responsible for 20,000 jobs. And that's just craft beer, right? Doesn't include any of the big beers. So I think that the one thing the state does understand is the craft beverage industry is an economic engine for this state. And so I think that's, a big part of why they support us the way they do and the way they've continued to support us the way they have. And we still have a lot of work to do. We want to save this industry. We did a survey with brewers a few months ago, and only 2 replied that they weren't going to reopen, which was an amazing number just to see, And so, and the interesting part of that is that between that 2 months and now, I know of 6 that are opening for the first time. So people are still getting into it, as crazy as they are, and it's not. So I'm hoping that we can keep piecing together enough help for the brewers of this state to come through this, because this isn't forever. I think it's the one thing that we have to understand. This isn't forever, and people are a big part of what Scott does. He needs people. That's what craft beer is. Like, you don't push a button and just the beer comes out at the end. You've got a whole chain of people in craft beer. So people are important, and hopefully everybody will be able to come back.
Yes, and I touched on something that's important. That yes, we want to be safe. And Scott, you spoke really well on how many regulations you're putting in, making sure people feel 100% confident. And as COVID cases dip, it becomes an economic issue. People are out of their jobs. People are, this is a huge moneymaker for New York and supplies the livelihoods for so many New Yorkers. So yes, we want to keep everybody safe. Yes, we want to follow regulations. We don't want to have another surge, but at the same time, we also, are keeping in mind the economy of New York and the people who work there. So with all of that said, is there anything that people can do to help breweries? And I'll start off with you, Scott. What can people at home do to help you guys get back on your feet?
Yeah, the number one way you can do that is to, go visit your local brewery, buy curbside, order for delivery, order for pickup. And when the doors are allowed to be open or the outdoor beer gardens are open, go and visit and be patient. We're all trying to figure this out together, and we're all, trying to find our way through this. So, if you do, go visit your local brewery and it takes a few minutes longer to get a beer, please just be patient as, the staff tries to figure out how to live with a face mask on all the time in the dead of summer and 90-degree heat, and
Right.
we're trying to make it work. So, please go visit and just purchase.
And Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that, Scott, that's really it. As people have been from the beginning, keep supporting your local brewery by doing the curbside, whatever you're comfortable with, the curbside, the home delivery, the shipping. Breweries have had time to figure that out, and a lot have done it really well. And so there's a system there. And also, Scott said, be patient. I would also add, be kind. Because breweries really are they're adapting. Nobody's ever been through this before. So go visit and spend your money and tip well if you can. And that'll help every brewery get through this, whether it's New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. It doesn't matter what state. Just keep supporting as people have. And I think people have really supported pretty well through this.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. And I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. And this has been such a great discussion. And I hope all of the best for every New York craft brewery going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you guys so much. And I want to thank all of our viewers. Thank you for tuning in. We will continue to cover craft beer and the COVID-19 outbreak on lohud.com. So you can check out more there. And again, thank you so much for tuning in.